So we already know the roles of Parliament and the heavy responsibility that rests on the shoulders of Parliament for those three functions of legislation, representation, and oversight. How can the people of whom are represented, for whom laws are made, and over whose processes are oversighted, be sure that something so critical like public participation is done properly from end to end? I ask this because if we don't, because you've talked about the society being so litigious, right?
Very.
Anything that doesn't meet the mark, anything you can whisper, it can be a whisker like that of a cat, very thin, very slim. It will be taken to court. It doesn't meet the threshold. A judge is going to throw it out based on that. We can see that.
And all the call,
which is we well within their rights as as courts, as judges. So, in order to safeguard law and the sanctity of it and its creation, how can Parliament ensure that everything that is done within those halls has met the mark, so that even if somebody takes it to court tomorrow, it will have met the threshold and the judicial officer has no choice but to say, actually, you know what? I'm going to throw this petition out because, number one, it met the requirements, meaningful and sufficient for public participation. Because name them, count them. Right now, all of them are hinged on that public participation. How can Parliament ensure that it meets the mark?
Well, first of all, I want to ask this question before I answer. What is the threshold? You've talked about the threshold. Can we know the threshold? Yeah. So that Parliament can be able to be guided, like what is the threshold? Because looking at Article 118 of the Constitution, it does not give those thresholds. And probably we need to write it because, again, Parliament cannot operate on things that are not written on law. So what is the threshold?
Okay. So it could be an issue of not knowing for Parliament.
No, the Parliament knows.
It's the threshold.
Parliament. We want because what Parliament knows is very clear. Article 118B. That is what talks about public participation. And again, if you look at Article 10(2), it's one of the values. Public participation is one of the values of this country.
Yep.
Okay. So when you speak of threshold, like for example, should it be 1,000 people? Should it be 900 out of 1,000?
Because it is not written anywhere.
Okay. Should it be 50 women, 50 men?
Can somebody come out? Because now
that is now the job that Parliament has not done.
Okay.
Let me explain.
Let me say
finish.
That job, Parliament has done what it knows best. Because if something is not specified, you do it what you know best.
Okay.
And one thing that we know best is issues of inviting public to anything is written down. It's 14 days notice. It is written down. And Parliament has operated clearly on that.
And those are the standing orders of Parliament.
Yes, they have given it out clearly. It is written, it is known, and it's part of the laws in this country. People are invited. And you are supposed to be invited through media of light circulation, including when I come to Spice. And I have to say, okay, well, there's going to be a public participation this day.
Yeah,
I go to a local radio.
Our committee is sitting.
We all do that. If you go to website, the Parliament website, you'll find all those things are there. People are very good. They go if you go to pages that are advertising tenders, pages that are advertising jobs, people are always there. But if you go to pages of government that deals with things to deal with public participation, people are not there. And so when the time of public participation reached, people don't come. When we were doing the the budget, we went to various counties. I'll tell you, there are counties where you go after being announced, including on the local radios, you find only 10 people sitting in that hall. And then when you go, people say, they're not doing something in this county X, Y, or Z.
Yes.
Because we are not aware. And yet, they were not involved, even after being informed. So the threshold you're talking about is what I want. And please guide me. Take me to the page that talks about the threshold that judges have always been operating on. Because again, what I know judges are operating on, judges are operating on the mood. I'm telling you, the mood. That is the mood. And we do not have a moodometer that measures the mood.
They operate
of how.
On the spirit and the letter of the Constitution.
Okay, let's
go to the spirit and the letter of the Constitution.
Yes.
Like you've said, Article 10 sets out the principles of governance in this country.
Yeah.
All right? And they say this is how we shall live as a people.
Yes.
For example, Chapter 6 talks about leadership and integrity.
Sure.
And this is how you shall be a person of integrity and occupy public office in this country. Then we have laws that go ahead now to define that. and say, for example, there's a Leadership and Integrity Act. There's a Public Officer Ethics Act. There are other laws. Even now, you're talking about, you are currently handling in Parliament a law on conflict of interest. They are all addressing Chapter 6 of the Constitution. Are they not?
Yeah.
Higher. When it comes to public participation, the spirit here is that the sovereign of the country shall be involved in the governance of their country.
Sure.
100%. And especially in those critical matters, when you're making a law that is going to affect them, when you're talking about taxation that's going to affect them, when you talk about spending money that's going to affect them, right?
Right.
That's a spirit. So what is expected is that now we translate that spirit into those defining laws. Okay? So do we have a law, for example, a Public Participation Act that goes ahead to say, this is how public participation shall happen, not only by Parliament, but by all state government agencies. If a Ministry of Mining is working on a new mining policy, how shall it involve the public in the development of that policy? So that when that policy goes to Cabinet or it comes to Parliament, Parliament can look at it and say, have all stakeholders participated in the development of this policy? Or is it just the idea of honchos at the Ministry of Mining? See? Similar, it will say, when Parliament is engaging the public, this is what it shall do. It is not just sufficient to say you shall have 14 days notice in a newspaper of public circulation and electronic and whatever media. There is more to that. Is there a Civic Education Act, for example, that says that there shall be budgetary allocation to make sure that there is civic education? Because the things that you're saying are, people can see, can hear. Tutaongea mambo ya budget kesho, kujeni Kachaliba. What's a big town in Kachaliba? Kachaliba town, right?
Yeah.
So kesho tutakuwa hapa Kachaliba, kujeni. People are hearing budget, they're thinking, hiyo kitu hiyo ni kubwa sana. If there was civic education facilitated by another piece of legislation that allocates money to it, people would then be able to understand budget and to understand how to interact with budget and budget issues and appear there. Am I?
You're communicating.
Okay.
One.
Okay.
What you've said, I will still bring you back to, because when judges are making decisions, when they're making ruling, when they're making judgments, they're basing it on a law. They're basing it on a written document. That is the document I'm asking you. Can you tell us that this is what the judges have used to rule out the public participation that has taken place? Because I'm sure it has taken place. To rule that this public participation isn't constitutional. Okay. Can you give me that and tell me this is the law that you never met? If not, then it is based on the mudometer and the pashometer and whatever environment you're talking about, where a judge wakes up and decides, for this, I'll decide it. I've actually met the threshold. For this, I decided it didn't. We need a law. That is the law I'm asking. So that I can also be able to take it to Parliament and say, listen, all the rulings, I think we've actually gone against this law.
Who makes laws?
It is Parliament.
Okay.
So I'm asking,
So if the law that doesn't exist,
yes,
and we know very well,
yes,
for example, if a law on how public participation is supposed to be carried out, number one. Number two, the threshold that it is supposed to meet in every instance, because we know the situation on the ground and sometimes what public participation looks like. We may want to deny it, but we know that sometimes you can call for public participation in a hall, 10 people show up, or we're going to mark the register and say it has been done. We know things like that go on.
Sure.
But if we are saying that there is no law that exists, and we know very well that Parliament passes particular processes to happen, and there is a non-existent law, upon whose shoulders then does the responsibility rest?
It is the lawyer, the Parliament,
to make
the
sure that something like that happens? Absolutely. And in the absence of that, we will continue to have things thrown out. It's the Privatization Act today. It's the housing levy tomorrow. It's Shifsha the day after that.
And that brings me
based
to the question.
on that. So why then does Parliament not see this and say, hold on, all the things that we've been passing are being thrown out because of this public participation thing? Why can't Parliament actually now say, you guys, we have to deal with this thing and enact?
No, actually, the thing is, you've not answered my question, and you're not answering my question. What is this that makes these judges throw out this thing? Because there should be a parameter. I want you to tell me this parameter, because the parameter we know is in Article 118B of the Constitution.
So what have they said? The judges, the court was very clear that this public participation that took place, whether you bring a paper that says 114,000 people showed up or 10 people showed up, for them it did not meet the threshold of being meaningful and sufficient.
Can we get this thing called meaningful and sufficient? Because if it is not written down, I'll tell you, judges will even if you meet all Kenyans, one person will say, there's a child of 15 years who was not met. And so it didn't meet the threshold. It should be written down. It should be clear. Otherwise, all the unconstitutional rulings, the ones that judges have used, they actually hinge it on public participation because their weak point is there. But unfortunately, even for them, they do not say you've gone against this law. They don't. Please give it to me if you got it now.
When something is unconstitutional, has it not gone against the law?
Which law?
The Constitution.
State it and say, it is at this point you didn't meet 1,000 people. It's at this point you didn't go to village X. It's at this point you didn't talk to the ladies. That is what I want. Please give it to us. Because what the Constitution say, it should be sufficient.
Okay, so let me be clear. What Parliament right now, speaking from you, remember, Parliament, the legislative arm of government, is requesting from the judiciary, the judicial arm of government, right now, is give us a law that is going. Remember,
Not give us law. Give us the parameters that you've used to rule this as unconstitutional.
So give us something that will now explain to us why this particular thing is unconstitutional.
Is it written? If not, then it is wrong.
Again. Okay, so when things continually are thrown out of court, or when things are thrown out of an act, what we are saying is that are you saying that the judiciary is failing by not giving the reasons or hinging it on a particular law as to what makes it wrong? Is that what you're saying?
That is exactly what I'm saying, that the judiciary has failed.
So if there is no...
Because the judiciary has failed, they have not said we are ruling it based on this law, based on these parameters. So if those parameters are not there, if now we go to Parliament and do laws that says it is from this point to this point that we think public participation will have taken place. And the judges still think otherwise, because even now, the ruling is based on their thinking. They have not provided for documents.
All right, because it is within their purview to do that as the judiciary, and there's something that sets them aside to do that. So let's step into the world of idealism for a minute, and let's assume that judges will come out and say, you know what, actually it doesn't exist. So you, our third arm of government over here, how about you then give us a law? Give us the law and let us then interrogate it and see how we can make it to work. Whose responsibility would that be?
It is Parliament.
Comes back to your doorstep.
It comes back to your doorstep. But then, before we actually reach there, we will want to ask them, why are you throwing it out? You should have just said, gentlemen, there is a gap. We do not have a law that talks about public participation. We have it in the Constitution. Please, can you give us a law that then tells us the parameters? If they rule without those parameters, they are doing it wrong. They're doing it wrong, yeah. They first of all need to say, okay, well, there's a gap. Please. Because this is Kenya. It's not that because I'm in Parliament, I'm supposed to know everything. And the reason why Article 1 of the Constitution says that the power belongs to the people, and the reason why people are brought into public participation. You come to Parliament, if even laws that are made in Parliament are made by Kenyans. People bring in their proposals. Private members' bill, it can be a government bill. You can bring it through a member. It goes through a committee and then it goes off the main house. So Kenyans are allowed to, through their representation, through their representatives, be able to even also make laws for this country. If judges find that within the management of our institutions, we've got something called public participation that is not clear, they've got a right to say, Parliament, listen, we do not want to continue throwing these things out. Please, can you give us parameters? Those parameters are not there.
Do you think generally that Parliament actually believes that public participation is a useful tool?
It's not about Parliament. It's It's about the people of Kenya. I am a person of Kenya.
Asking. There's a reason why I'm asking. Do you believe that Parliament believes that public participation is vital in lawmaking?
100%.
Yes? They
100%.
do. Okay. So then it is important that it's not just bodies filling a hall, but that it's people actually giving their views and their understanding of the way things are supposed to happen. across board, yes?
It's true.
Okay. If it is so important, why wouldn't there be the insistence then on saying we can't continue to have things thrown out by judges, by the judiciary, and insistence upon saying then we need to make sure that one, something is crafted, as opposed to an explanation every time being given by who has the purview to say, look, based on my interpretation, this is what I'm going to say. But if a law is crafted and or interrogated to make sure that this is the threshold upon which we're going to exist, I'm going to bring it back to your doorstep.
Let me tell you, I'll repeat and say, all these things are circumstantial. They are based on the feeling of the judges and the lawyers. And the reason why I tell you, something that is being ruled from one court is actually overturned from the other one. It takes me back to the BBI. The BBI was a very wrong process. But it was ruled in court and said it was a very right process, it can continue. But if you come back and look at it again, it's only that the Kenyans rejected. After that, there was another ruling then that actually then came against the other ruling. These are the judges that are sitting, because there are no parameters that the lower court was looking at. There are no parameters that the upper court are looking at. So it is based on the interpretation. Judge A says it is wrong. Judge B says it is right.
Neither the High Court nor the Court of Appeal had said that the BBI was okay. In fact, the High Court was rough. It had even said that the person called Uhuru Kenyatta should reimburse Kenyans for that process.
The
Court of Appeal said it's wrong.
Come down. Before you go to the High Court and the Court of Appeal, come down.
To Malaysia.
Come down.
To Malaysia. Mheshimiwa, thank you for joining us today. It's 10 a.m. We need to have this conversation. We need to continue this conversation. It's an important one. Titus Lete is an MP for Kachalibo constituency. He's been our guest today. Thank you for tuning in to Kenya's biggest conversation. Time runs very, very fast. But we're having a very good time and good engagements. We'll be back tomorrow, Thursday, the 26th. Have a lovely day, 10 a.m.